Um, Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It's almost incomprehensible to me. It is that we're at week 10. It's unbelievable. Let me ask you. I'm assuming that I can ask people to either in the chat bar or people could. Give me if they want to say something, you can either give me a thought, an applause, or in the chat bar. If you've attended more than one of these sessions, let me know that. And maybe a second question: has anyone gone back to the YouTube channel and checked out any sessions from the past? Komori, remind me, last week was on time management, is that right? I think that's
it was on mindfulness.
Exactly, that's my next guess. That's right. So Dory did a session of mindfulness. Tom, were you on that session?
I missed that one.
You missed one.
I've been at several of the others.
Yeah. So if you missed that, I would say that I think Dory did a really good job in 30 minutes in introducing us to the concept of mindfulness. And actually we did a little practice. All of us did a little practice, trying to have our mini Zen moment for the day. I thought it was great. So as I think everyone knows, we have done these sessions since the onset of the coronavirus. We did them, because we can, we've got deep training capabilities, and we thought that as people were working remotely, that it might be a helpful diversion. So we're gonna do, I think, one more of these next week. Komori will list the session, and then I think we're gonna evaluate, do we continue doing these? Do we do them monthly? Do we stop doing them? One of the things that we will do, I promise, is we're going to send out maybe a customized, Komori, listen to these words, I think a customized email, I think to all the people who've attended, trying to get a sense of what have you gained from these, what's worked, maybe some things that maybe didn't work that we could improve on. Get your thoughts about sessions that you might be interested in going forward. One of my colleagues gave me a calendar a few years ago, and on the calendar, every day on the calendar, he's got a saying or a phrase, and then underneath it there's a to-do, and I thought it was relevant given today's session. So today's session is on addressing employee morale, which I think is important for all of us to think about. I know it's something that I think about often. And we have our weekly stand-up meeting tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and I'll talk about some of the things that we're going to do to try to boost our morale internally. So the quote is, people who actively participate in developing a solution are more likely to implement it. When someone is complaining, encourage them to come up with a solution rather than handing them an answer. Ask open-ended questions like, what do you think could be done about the situation? Or what do you want done? Or how do you think the situation could be resolved? And I think when we think about employee morale, I do believe that people are more likely to support solutions that they're a part of than not. And I think that's true. So I think one of the things that we'll talk about with employee morale is what are ways that leaders can bring people into the fold and make them part of the solution. Some housekeeping details before we get underway. I would ask that everyone mute your phones, mute your audio lines. I'm going to try to make this one of the pieces of feedback that we have gotten is, try to make these, in 30 minutes a little bit more interactive. So I'm going to try to do that. And so when I do that, you can either type something into the chat bar, or if you want to say something I would say if you're going to say something, if you can say who you are and be brief and be done, that would be great. If anyone wants a copy of the PowerPoint slides, let me know. As I think you know, we'll send out a link afterwards with a recording of the session in case you want to share it with others. So again, we've got a blend of clients and colleagues. So I should probably ask all of you what's the mission statement of Boxer Advisors, but the mission of the company is to deliver high-end, high-impact consulting, coaching, training solutions to meet our client needs. And again, our experience is when we strategically integrate our solutions, we get real results. And so our tagline is, transferring insights into action, translating insights into action. And so, we're all about, hopefully in 30 minutes, you'll learn something that you can take back and use to improve your morale and your organization. The three things that we do are we help clients to build leadership capabilities, drive organizational change, and engage and retain top talent. So that's what we do. What I want to talk about a little bit is what do we mean by morale? What do we mean by morale? So if you think about morale, it's really the confidence, enthusiasm, discipline. It's the confidence, enthusiasm, discipline of a person or group at a particular time. That's sort of how they're feeling about the organization. And team morale is defined as the attitude, satisfaction, overall outlook that employees have with their association to the organization. I think it is true that more satisfied, more motivated, more empowered, more connected employees tend to produce at a higher level, So I would ask, what's your reaction to that definition? And second question is, if you happen to work, I know Tom does, if you happen to work for a federal agency, to what extent are you familiar with your agency's EVS scores? And so I'll let you have a whack at that. Great. So, that's sort of the definition. One of the things that we try to do in every one of these is give you some specific suggestions of things that you can do. And so one thing, and again, I'm mindful of this every day. Kamori, who is our erstwhile producer on this session, I think she and I had a really good conversation this week about how engaged is she, what's working, what's not, what can we do to increase her level of satisfaction, what can we do to increase her contribution to the company. Ultimately you got to hire good people, and then I think you got to create a space where everyone feels confident to perform at their very best. Kamori, I know I'm gonna blank, but when Kamori and I talked earlier this week, and Kamori, if I don't get this right, if you remember the quote, you can tell me the quote. But I thought Kamori said that, employees are like plants, and all of them need water, attention. And so I think what she was saying is, as the leader, you got to be attentive to your people. Kamori, was that the quote, or do you remember it differently and maybe better?
That's what I said. I said, no one grows if they're not watered.
There you go. No one grows if they're not watered. I got to write that down. But I think that is true. I think that's true. And I think I told Kamori in a moment, that's good. I'm going to use that again. Didn't know I'd use it today. I bet you Kamori didn't know I'd use it today. But I think it's an accurate statement. So I think some things that I think a leader can do to maintain the morale in their organization are to be visible and vocal. One of the things I'm going to do is take a look at and discuss what are the things that we can do during the lockdown, during the time that we're working remotely, and what are some things a leader can do as we return to work. But I think it's fair for leaders to be visible in phone calls and conference calls and town hall meetings and Zoom meetings. One of the things I know Tom has checked out is one of our partners has this tool. The name of the company is MovieCom. And so I think one of the ways leaders can be visible at this time is to draft thoughtful, creative emails. And this company has a way that you can drop in movie clips into the emails. And I think that is a way for leaders to be more visible with their people. I think you can be transparent. Again, we're going to have our Friday meeting tomorrow. We're going through some transitions internally. I'm going to talk about those transitions. I'm going to talk about our plans. I will turn to Kamori and the rest of our team asking, are there any questions or suggestions? I would be confident. I would be authentic. I'd be flexible, but set clear expectations. You have to give staff control. One of the sessions we did was on, how do you delegate effectively? And obviously you don't want to micromanage. I think you have to, give back big picture to the community, and you got to give back to your people. Again, as Kamori said, you got to water your plants, and you have to do your best to instill a thrive mentality and message. One of the books that we're reading for our executive book club is called Dare to Lead. I think that's the right title. Is that right, Kamori? The Brene Brown book, Dare to Lead? I think that's right.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, so I'd ask everyone in the chat bar, if you can tell me what are some other things that either you've done as a leader or you've seen leaders do to boost morale. What are some things that you've done that you've seen leaders do to boost morale other than what's on this list? Okay, so that's the list. If anyone has any other, that's great. So then the question is, what causes low morale? What causes low morale? Kamori, give me one thing that is on your list of what causes low morale.
I guess not listening to input from employees, not feeling heard, employees not feeling heard by their upper management or direct management.
Amen. So I think some of the things that we've seen, and I think the data proves this out is, I think I would add what Kamori said, maybe at the top of this list, people, either leaders not listening to their people or maybe worse, employees not feeling heard. But I think some other things that cause to have morale sink is when there's no growth, there's no clarity, there are leadership changes or leadership problems, or if there's just inherent problems with the organization itself. I tend to think that what Kamori said is really relevant, and ultimately, again, we know that people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders. And so, frankly, we have someone who's leaving our company tomorrow, and I, have thought about it many times this week. What are some things that I can learn from this? What are some things that I can do different? Just because, again, we teach employee retention, we teach employee engagement. The cost of replacing people is significant. And so I think you do need to take a look at the issue of employee morale. I think that's, really important. So
I have another question, Ken.
Okay, sure, Kamori, yeah.
What are some of So are there any other things with some of the clients that you've worked with in the past who have experienced low morale, and what did they do?
I'm just trying to manage our time. So I can think of two, one government client and one corporate client. So one of our government clients was several years ago experiencing significant organizational changes. They were trying to stand up their organization as a fee for service organization in the federal government. And that is a little different, I think, for many federal employees to understand and implement that mindset of, we're not going to get our funding from, the general budget. We're going to get it from fees that we're charging our clients. And so we worked with them over 7 years to help them address these issues, and they're still working at it today. I think that with this client, I know one thing that they did is they initiated, again, this people who actively participate in developing a solution are more likely to implement it. So one of the things they did, Kamori, is they launched a series of 3 process action teams to try to come up with solutions to address some of the processes that were most broken in the organization. And so, one of the interesting things, they actually, we had an independent organization do some measurement of the effectiveness of the intervention, and they were able to document $500,000 return on investment from that effort. I can think of another. So another was one of the big utilities, Constellation Energy, and they were going from the old Baltimore Gas Electric to Constellation Energy, and overnight they became a Fortune 500 company. And they recognized that career paths were unclear, that people really didn't have a sense of where they fit in. That they didn't clearly send the message to employees that employees needed to take primary responsibility for their own development. And so they launched a big career development initiative and trained thousands of employees and hundreds of managers. The good news story at the end of that is they actually put in an application a couple of times to be on the Fortune 500 best companies to work for. And they actually improved their ranking in those scores by 75 points in 1 year. So those are 2, I think, good news stories about organizations that had some employee morale issues, what they did and what was the result. So one of the things that I thought maybe we should talk a little bit is, as many of our clients are still dealing with the coronavirus, what are some things that leaders can do during this time where we're having to work remotely and people are dealing with frankly lots of other distractions in their lives? So I think you can obviously use virtual team meetings, lunches, happy hours, online yoga sessions, workout sessions. You can celebrate employee milestones. You can have company-wide contests. You can offer wellness resources. Again, I'll ask the question, anything that your organization has done particularly well during the time that we've been working remotely that you thought was really helpful in terms of building morale? Anything that you noticed about what your organization did? Again, you can either type it in the chat bar, or if you want to, you can unmute and say something. Weekly check-ins. Yeah, I think that's something that we have started. And Kamori, just so you know, one of the things I when I was preparing for this, I think we can do a better job at our weekly check-ins is doing something that might be a little fun. So we may not do it tomorrow, but we'll do it next time. I think that's something that we can do. Anyone else have any other suggestions? So I think, so those are some ideas of things that we've done and we've seen other of our clients do. I think some other things to think about, as many organizations are getting ready for their people to return to work. I think some things that you can do to help boost the morale are you can get clear about what are the skill sets you need to hire and or already have within your organization. So as Komori knows, we have moved 100% of our clients that had training scheduled in the March to July timeframe. 100% of them have moved those engagements virtually. And so one of the things that we're doing is we're trying to get Komori and others on our team to increase their skill levels to be a producer of not only Zoom meetings, but Adobe Connect meetings and maybe Teams, using the Google product Teams. And we may need to get some additional people. I think one of the things you can do is embrace new or revised roles. So if your organization was hosting a series of weekly chats or weekly conversations, and you intend to continue that, you got to think through who's going to facilitate them, who's going to be the timekeeper, who's going to be the scribe. I think those are important. I think you may want to invest in new learning platforms or training sessions to upskill or reskill your workers. So I know for us, as Komori knows, I could spell Adobe, but I wasn't familiar with it. And so in the last 2 weeks, I've done 4 or 5 training sessions using Adobe Connect, just because many of our government clients are not that interested in using Zoom. And so, we've had to make some adjustments. And so some of our clients have reached out to us to provide them 60, 90-minute webinars on very specific skills that they can use to build the skills of their people. One of the things you can do is invest in coaching training for managers. As I think I may have mentioned in one of these sessions, with the onset of the coronavirus, I've had a coach working with me. I knew early on that we were in uncharted territory that we have never faced in my lifetime. And so I've been working with someone who's trying to help me be the best that I can be for our people. I think the other thing is you can diagnose and identify the health of your organization, and get maybe do a pulse survey or some other assessment of what you can do. Does anyone else, if you have any other thoughts about what you can do as we think about returning to work, let me know. So when you think about investing in your people, the data is pretty clear that it's a smart idea. It's not one of those things that is a nice to have. I think it's a must have. So 86% of businesses and HR leaders believe they don't have an adequate leadership pipeline. That's pretty scary. Only 51% of employers feel confident about retaining top talent as the economy improves. That's not good. That's not good. Obviously there are a lot of people who are unemployed or underemployed, and when the restrictions are lifted, you're going to have a lot of people who are available, a lot of different jobs that are available. I think the last statistic here is a good one, is 25% retention is 25% higher for employees who've actively engaged in company-sponsored mentoring. So one of the things I know Komori knows we've done with several of our clients is we've helped them to launch or relaunch, or we provided tools for them to help implement a mentoring program. So the data is pretty clear, again, that this is something that is really important for you to do. And again, not a nice to have, a must have. So before we end, what I'll do is talk about a couple of resources that we have. I think, Komori, hopefully that's true, is that we'll be able to provide a link to these in a follow-up email. Is that fair or not? No, we can't do that.
That's true. We can do that.
Excellent. So some books that you may want to think about is The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, Building a High Morale Workplace. There's a book that we're reading. Hold on one second. On our book club, sorry about that, called The Culture Code. The Culture Code. That's another book that you might want to consider. Clearly, Dare to Lead, Brene Brown is a great one, So what I want to do, I think, in the time we've got left is, I think Komori is already ahead of the pack, which is great. So our next webinar is 11 must-haves for a successful leader. Gee, that sounds like a good session. I like that. I would be interested in signing up for that. I think what I'm going to do is we'll take questions and talk about next steps. And I think what I'll do is I'll stop sharing. And if anyone has any questions about morale in the few minutes we've got remaining, I'm happy to answer them. Does anyone have any questions or comments about employee morale and what we can do?
We have this competition thing. How do you celebrate employee success without it being a competition? Because to me, it drags down the morale when everything has to be a competition. So my boss chooses not to celebrate people's successes, and I think that's wrong. But so it just drags down the morale.
Yep. So why do you, that's Roberta, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you think it becomes competitive?
I don't know. I've been looking at this for a while because it's really dragged our team down. And I think we have a good team, and I don't really think it's our boss, and I don't know. I have really looked at that because I would like to offer up some solutions to that, but by not celebrating the successes, it has really brought the team morale down.
Gotcha. Roberta, I have 4 specific suggestions for you. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. One is I would think about, again, I'm not saying you have to do all these, but I'll just give you some specific suggestions. So one thought is I would think about in your next team meeting raising this issue and just saying, I don't get it. Can you help me understand? Why does it feel to me, again, you want to use an I statement. You're having one of those crucial conversations. I know Tom could do a whole session for us on crucial conversations, but you want to use an I statement. I don't understand why it does feel like it's a win-lose situation and we can't celebrate successes. So that's one thing I would do. A second thing I think you can do, how big is the team, Roberta?
It's only 5 of us.
5 of us. So I think what you can do, again, I know Komori knows. So one of the things I did, not at the last session, but the session before, is I went around and I said something positive about everyone, And then I think I think the third thing you can do, I think, is, talk about why it's so important to be able to celebrate achievements, and that should be a good thing. It should be a boost, and talk about how can maybe we do it in a way that doesn't feel like, we're singling out people, or people maybe feel excluded, or they feel like some people are the favorites. So those are, I think, 3 specific suggestions. I know I said 4, but I've got 3. Does anyone ever? So I'm going to stop there, because I know we say, Roberta, was that helpful?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, my pleasure. So we always say we're going to start on time and end on time. I'm willing to go 5 more minutes. Does anyone have any other questions?
Ken, I just wanted to help add to your comment to Roberta.
Please.
Just with the atmosphere, it seems like has been created that there is a competitive atmosphere. So that would definitely need to be like attended to first. Roberta, like trying to figure out, with the help of what Ken said, to de-escalate that feeling or atmosphere of we all are in competition with each other, even though it's a small group of people. So I think that it's figuring out how to cut that would be really important to help doing what you would like to do, or maybe some of the other team members want to do, which is be able to celebrate each other without that competition on everyone's back.
That's right. Amen. All right.
This is Tom. I'd like to highlight one thing that my boss has done very well. She went to a meeting, was given great kudos, and people were congratulating her. She turned it around to this is really a team effort, so the congratulations go to the team.
Yes, that's right. I think the really good leaders, Tom, I think don't, they take the blame when things don't go well, and they share the praise, with others when they do go well. I think that's a great suggestion.
Okay.
I think, Tom, your idea about a virtual happy hour is great. So I would say, unless anyone has any other questions, we are thinking about what to do with these coffee sessions going forward. And so I know the people on the session today, you've been at least at a couple of them. And so we're going to refine the questions that we ask and try to get a handle on what makes sense going forward. And so if you have any thoughts for us that might help us figure that out, that would be great. Does anyone have one last question, or are we good? If we're good, can I ask everyone in the chat bar, just tell me what's one thing that you learned or confirmed from today's session? What's one thing that you learned or confirmed? And then we'll end the session today. Roberta, thank you for raising that question. I think that's something that I imagine other organizations wrestle with, and maybe something that most people don't deal with. So thanks for raising that. All right, everyone, have a great rest of the day. Komori, thanks for riding shotgun and helping keep us on track today. Tom, thanks for providing your perspective. Is it Nika? Is that how I pronounce that? Hopefully I do. There you go. Thank you, Komori. That's great. All right, everyone. Have a great rest of the day. Bye now. Thanks.